What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with a DFS live stream, little live before lock action before the ZOZO Championship. Only about an hour and 50 minutes until we get locked, so there won't be any last-second tinkering. Ownership is going to be as updated as humanly possible here, and I've already got my lineups in, so pretty much I can bring you the most clear picture as ever here for this slate, just because we have all of that done. So this is your time. We're going to go through the weather. We'll go through all of your live questions. And then I've picked out, I think it was 15 players as I last checked, that I want to talk about here. A few fades. I believe 7 or 8 of them are going to be fades. And then 7 low-owned pivots you can get to around them to really structure this live stream. So let's go ahead and kick this thing off here. Hopefully everybody is having a great start to their Wednesday evening, which is always among my favorite, but particularly when we get golf this evening too, right? Usually we're building our lineups and then it's like Christmas morning, right? Trying to get sleep the night before. Depending on how we start, might get a pretty good sleep tonight, right? So we'll see how it goes. Either way, Narashino Country Club, Accordia Golf Narashino. If you want to add the entire suffix, I should say prefix there, obviously, suffix at the end. Should have realized that. Either way, though, difficult golf course, right? So under perfect weather last year, and that's pretty much what we had. There was like 1 or 2 days where the wind gusts got to like 15 to 20 miles an hour. I don't want to get it too ahead of ourselves right now, but it's going to be really dicey out there in terms of the weather. It's still played over par, right? So we have to use that as a baseline, but also understand that it was playing towards the easier end of the spectrum when we're looking at the general difficulty of this course. And the winning score was 15 under par. But I think that's a little bit deceiving considering that second place had 2 people tied for 10th. Then it was another 4-shot difference there down to 4th place. So you're looking at a difficult track, borderline major championship level type of test here at Narashino Country Club. And though Hideki won by 5, I think that the true profile of a winner here is going to be closer to maybe like a 7 to 8 under par. I don't think it's going to get close to 20 under par very often, and especially with the weather conditions that we have in store. And I won't go ahead and hold off any longer. Just look at this here for the first 2 days. So this is the Tokyo heliport, which is, I believe, within 3 miles of the golf course. So it's going to give us a relatively good idea of what to expect there. If you look at the PGA Tour site for their weather, they have a similar type of forecast here, and we can't zoom in anymore. The only forecast we get is here every 3 hours. It's all we have to work with here, but it's still relatively accurate. Relatively high winds, right? 22, 23, 25 mile an hour wind gusts throughout the entire day. Sustained winds close to 14 to 16 miles an hour. Neither of those things are something that you can scoff at. It's going to play relatively difficult. And then you have that weather coming in right around 9 the whole way through 3 to 6 p.m. per the PGA Tour broadcast. So it's going to be thunderstorms, sprinkles throughout the day. In fact, I believe it's like an 80 to 90% chance of rain from 9 a.m. to that 6 p.m. window. So you're looking at a lot of rain coming down. Most of the time when we're on Windfinder, they usually try to under project the rainfall totals. So you'll see a lot of like 0.03s, 0.04s, and that's still like, relatively strong. I shouldn't say strong, a good amount of precipitation. And a lot of times they under project it. We've seen that over the years, even over here on the American side. I would imagine that's a similar type of story over there in Japan. On Friday, again, there's no waves, right? So there's 78 players this week. So when we're discussing the weather, we aren't going to focus as much on like, who's going off in the morning versus who's going off in the afternoon. Just more from a, trying to get a feel for the golf course, right? How it's going to play. It's going to play difficult on Friday too. Wind gusts pretty much in the same sort of category. Now, towards the afternoon, they do dive down a little bit in terms of the wind gusts, but it's still, 13, 14 miles an hour of sustained winds is going to throw the players off a little bit. On Saturday and Sunday, the winds are a little bit calmer. So you can see the sustained winds closer to like 9 to 12 miles an hour. On Sunday, in fact, they get down to the single digits when they'll be finishing up the golf tournament. But there's no rain in the forecast, right? That's probably the bigger effect. Is here on Thursday. It's going to be an absolute slosh. You can go out there, score something like 1 under, 2 under par. You might be the first round leader. Something like even par, maybe even 1 or 2 over is probably going to be in the top half of the field today. I mean, that's assuming that they don't have any sort of delay, any sort of postponement of the round, that sort of thing. Now, if they were to try and not get out there during the really heavy downpours, maybe push play into Friday, then it could play like a birdie fest, right? So it's kind of up in the air, right? Because if they postpone it, it could play extremely easy. You have a soft golf course where you can throw darts. But if they're playing during this downpour, which as of right now, all of the weather sites that I've looked at aren't projecting for thunderstorms, just heavy showers and heavy winds throughout that entire period. It's gonna suck to be a golfer out there. I mean, they could be posting a couple 80s. You might, especially from some of the Japanese players, you might see some wacky rounds out there. So just warning you right now, it's going to be a little bit of a slosh today. We have Wilson Dog down there. What's going on? Gary Kerr down there too. All good, boys. What's going on? We'll get to your questions a little bit later, but let's hop over to the player poll side now. So we talked about the weather, I guess in general, just to give you an idea. So it's going to play more difficult. We should be looking at around the green a little bit more, also driving distance. So one key factor of all of this rain that's going to come down is that it's going to play a little bit softer. And as a result, you're going to get a lot less rollout. So some of the shorter players might be at a slight disadvantage, particularly if that rough, which Xander Schauffele at least has touted the rough as being a lot more difficult in this version of the event than in years past. The rain would make that even more of a problem. So some of the longer players could have an advantage, but I'd rather have players that are hitting it in the fairway and just avoiding that penalty altogether. Still have the ability to apply spin to the golf ball. And like Xander Schauffele was saying, even if there's not a lot of moisture on the ground, so, by maybe Sunday, surely by Saturday afternoon, a lot of that moisture is going to be evaporated from the course. You're still dealing with relatively penal rough, right? So that's the idea with looking at some of the better accuracy guys off the tee. But maybe here for Thursday and Friday, you see a slight advantage to some of the bombers. So it's pretty nuanced take there, but that's my thoughts on the weather and how it's going to have an impact. Let's hop over to the player pool side. So let me share my screen here, see what we've got going on. 1 second. There we go. Okay, sharing the screen here. Let's see what's going down in chat. Let's catch up, see what's going on, if there's any questions and all that sort of fun stuff. Wilson says, do you like Danny Lee this week? I don't like him, right? So he's not in my personal player pool, but I'm not against the idea. I'd rather take him than a lot of those other Japanese tour players. But there are 4 or 5 Japanese tour players that I am playing this week. It's the ones that we've seen show up on the PGA Tour before, whether it's at Open Championship, something like a US Open. Plenty of them have been in those sort of fields. ZOZO Championship, CJ Cup, a lot of them have gone into those sort of events too. I'm not against Danny Lee. I like him a lot more than most of those players, but he's not somebody in my personal player pool. So, take that with a grain of salt, right? I think he's an okay play, but not enough to make my personal player pool, if that gives you an idea. Gary Kerr says, how's the wind going to play a factor with the course being tree lined? It's tree lined, but it is relatively open on quite a few holes. So I watched the broadcast from 2019 when Tiger won. I think I've watched that like 5 or 6 times at this point. Last time out with Hideki, obviously that was all televised there in the afternoon. I don't know. It's like any golf course, right? In the United States, we have like Quail Hollow. That's extremely tree lined. A bunch of those North Carolina, South Carolina golf courses also have that same sort of effect. It's so hard to quantify because at some tracks, it protects the players from the wind. And then at some tracks, it throws them off because they can't feel the wind and their ball's still being affected by it. So it's hard to say, Gary. In general, I'd say, hey, if it's going to be windy, it's going to be more difficult, right? Like 99% of the time, that's the case. It's not going to help. I can tell you that much, right? So it's going to make scores go up, that's for sure. Nick Marr says, I might have to stay up late just to watch Tyrrell Hatton. And how do I feel about Keegan? So I love Keegan Bradley. I like him a lot more than Tyrrell Hatton. I'll just say that. Tyrrell Hatton's going to have a lot of fun out there in those conditions. I think that's kind of what you were alluding to there. The Angry Gnome, particularly, I'm assuming they're going to play lift, clean, and place. We'll probably get that announcement here soon. I would imagine, right, with all that rain being forecasted, that they're going to have to do lift, clean, and place unless this golf course is just the most perfectly designed drainage course in human history, which might be the case. Out there in Japan, they're nutty when it comes to their golf course architecture and agronomy. They're on another level. Like legitimately, like the best golf courses in the world are pretty much all in Japan. I can just tell you that, and a few in Australia. They have a few that can definitely compare to, but America, they're nowhere near as well manicured. I mean, unless it's Augusta National, that's just all that money being put into it. But you get the idea here. So I like Keegan. In general, though, hey, it's going to be fun watching Hatton, right? If they're not playing lift, clean, and place, he's going to cry a lot when he's getting those mud balls. Wilson says, do you like Sebastian Munoz? I do. He played well here last time. So just to give you the exact number, let me see. Sorry, I have to like look around. My mic's below this. You can't see it on the camera. I've like moved a few things around. I can't see all of my tabs because my mic's in the way. So let's see. He finished in fourth place last year. He finished at -6, right? So that was the three-way tie after Tringale and Steele that were there tied for second place. So yeah, he had a relatively good tournament. I like him here. I think that he's got a lot more talent than the players around him, just in terms of aggressiveness, approach play, putting upside. He's got all of it that you need. He's just a volatile guy, right? If you're playing him in a large field GPP, you have to know the volatility that he's bringing along with him. You can trunk slam. Luckily, you get all 4 rounds for this event, right? So there's no missed cut equity to worry about. It's just that he might finish dead last. So that's within his range of outcomes, but he could certainly win this event too. Yeah, of course, Gary, that's what we're here for. If you have any other questions, feel free to fire away. Jack says, do you think Kita Nakajima, so former #1 amateur in the world, can do anything this week? Or will it take him time to find his feet now that he turned pro? I side towards the latter, Jack. I am playing Kita this week. I hate giving away all the sleepers down low. We're going to talk about a couple, I promise about it. But I feel like it's going to take him some time. Now, I'm taking a shot on him just in case. He has the talent. We know that. Some of the other players, like a James Pio, for example, Eugenio Chikara, that were also up there in the rankings to be the #1 amateur in the world. I believe James Pio actually was at one point. Austin Greaser, all of those sort of players are now just starting to find their feet, right? So James Pio, for example, right? A couple top 10s on the Live Golf Tour, which you can laugh about it all you want. He's kicked the ass of like 30, 40 actual PGA Tour members in a few weeks in a row. Again, I actually take those results seriously, and I think that they're going to matter. If he's starting to find his feet, right, guys that were in that same sort of class, you would have to think that a Nakajima is probably going to sooner rather than later as well. So I don't think it's crazy. I'm playing him this week. I'll just tell you that right now, Jack. But I also have an understanding that he might end up flaming out, right? Like a Cole Hammer, for example. Cole Hammer, we've been saying this about for like 3 to 4 years at this point, and he still looks like complete dog shit, right? So that could happen too. But then you have guys like Sahith Theegala, right, who we thought was going to take that step forward this year, and he did, right? He showed us. He competed multiple times, nearly won tour events last year. It happens quickly, right? When they start to take those improvements, it happens way faster than normally we expect them to happen. So yeah, Jack, I think you're onto something there. I hate that you gave it away though, right? I hate that you put me on the little spiel here because I want him to be like 0.2% owned. But hey, I think the 33 people watching right now, first off, should hit that like button. That's the first thing you should do. But outside of that, I don't think we're going to impact ownership all that much, right? There's only like an hour and a half to lock. So I'm willing to spread a little bit of secrets here. We'll give away a little bit more information for this stream just because of that. It's okay. Nick Mars says, why isn't Theegala more popular? Nick, shh. You guys are giving away all my picks. Again, it's okay, right? Because not that many people are watching. It's right before lock. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. Theegala, why isn't he more popular? I guess because he was chalk, didn't really pay off all that much. I feel like the narrative is like, oh, you got to be super accurate off the tee, which, I've kind of been spearheading that narrative, and I tend to agree with it. But sometimes a player's skill just trumps the course fit, right? Sometimes you got to play somebody that's a bad course fit just because they're better than everybody else. Yeah, that's the hit Theegala. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, Nick. He's one of my favorite plays this week. We'll definitely talk about it. You're not complaining. Yeah, dude, I have Theegala this week. I really like Theegala this week. I have I think 38% Theegala in my player pool. So I'm with you there. On Tom Hoagie, I'm not a huge Tom Hoagie guy this week. I'll just say that. I think he's a little bit too highly owned for me. I like low owned Tom Hoagie when no one wants to play him. When he's highly owned, I usually fade Tom Hoagie. So yeah, we're actually going to talk about Hoagie. I believe I have him down as a fade there. If not, I guess I just gave away another player. Again, it doesn't really matter. There's only 38 people in here. It should be 38 likes on the video, by the way. Since there's 38 in here, I need y'all to hit that like button. Wilson says, what do you think about Danny Lee? I think he's okay. So I kind of mentioned that earlier. I think he's an okay play. He's not my favorite though. BJH says, what do you think about a veteran like Iwata? Oh boy. You guys are getting on every single sleeper. I mean, look at this. We're going to talk about him. Okay. So I'm not going to give away everything right now. We'll talk about Iwata towards the end of the player pool, but yeah, dude, you guys like, we're all on the same page right now. I love it. Everyone's bringing up all these sleeper picks that I'm on that, I don't know. I thought I was being sneaky about it, but I guess not. I mean, maybe you guys are just really bright. But that's not maybe. I know you guys are really bright out there. That's why you guys are watching this channel right now. But hey, I guess we're all on the same page. Yeah, we'll talk about it. I like him a whole lot, especially because he's done it before, right? So if you look at his RSM Classic results, he was nearly winning after the first 2 rounds. He's shown up at the ZOZO before. He's had success on the Japanese tour like crazy this year. Yeah. There's a lot of reasons to like Iwata, but again, we got to be quiet about it because we don't want him to get ownership now. Wilson says, "Do you like Mito?" I don't like him. He's a fade. We'll talk about it. Steven says, "Riley is still a play for sure." You said you're off, Hoagie. All good, dude. Don't even feel sorry about it. I'm going to talk about it anyways, right? I'm giving you shit about it because, we don't want everyone to play him, right? We want to play him, right? I think he makes a lot of sense. He's got the upside. But we don't want everyone else to play him, right? So I'm just giving you a hard time there. Don't worry about it. So let's hop into this. So we're not going to talk about every player. You guys know my projections. If you want all of them, everything that's blacked out is on the Patreon page, right? So ownership, I left the ones up that we're going to talk about here, but if you're looking for the full picture, you guys know where to find it. Link is in the description. Anyway, shameless plug aside, I hate doing that. If you can't tell, like I gotta plug the business side, right? There's a financial component to what I'm doing here, but obviously I care about the content a little bit more, right? That's the passion. That's why we're here. So up top, the 2 stud options I don't think you can go wrong with. So Xander and Hideki Matsuyama, both. First, Hideki won last year, finished in second in 2019. So the 2 iterations here has a win and a second place finish. Kind of similar to Patrick Cantlay, right? Who was either winning or finishing in second place every year at the Shriners. Now, it's a smaller sample size, but that same sort of course history. And with Xander Schauffele, he won the Olympics, so plays well in Japan. It's a one event sample size, but then it's also played well at the ZOZO Championship. So you look at his event history, right? 28th place last year wasn't all that good, but technically, and it says 2020 here, but this is the 2019 season. He finished in 10th, right? So you love to see that. Just in general, I like both plays. They're both coming in with the ownership that you'd expect them to. Here, one second, guys. Throat was giving me some issues there. My bad. Got the water here, though, or a safety net. In general, though, I don't think you can go wrong, right? I think they both make a lot of sense. They're both relatively chalky. So if you're going to take either player in your player pool, you're going to have to invest pretty heavily into either player to get the leverage that you need. I think they're both worth doing it with, though. So I'll just say that I think they're both really good plays. Hideki Matsuyama, we do have to talk about the injury concern. So he withdrew from the Pro-Am, which I'm going to go look down chat. Somebody probably commented about it, right? Like, let's see. Anyone comment about it? No, dang it. I thought one of y'all would have been like, oh, you hear about Hideki's injury thing, whatever. Yeah, he withdrew from the Pro-Am yesterday. So he's done that before and then got out there and played exceptionally. He's done that before and then withdrew after lock before, right? So he's given us a little taste of both ends of the spectrum there. And last year, before he ended up playing here, he told the media that he was a 1 out of 10 when it came to his health, and then went out there and won by 5 strokes. So just because he's withdrawing from the Pro-Am the day before doesn't mean we have to eliminate him from our player pool. I'm just going to tell you that straight up, right? Last year, I was the Dumbo who heard him go, oh, I'm a 1 out of 10 with my health, and then faded him like a complete slapdick, right? Don't be a slapdick. Don't pull a Luke last year and fade somebody just because he wants to lower expectations for his country. And there's been a lot of people speculating about that, and I think they're spot on. Hideki doesn't want to get everyone riled up, right, when he goes over there to Japan. He's a mega star there. I don't think a lot of people realize the type of superstar that Hideki is in Japan. He's the equivalent to a Patty Mahomes, a Tom Brady over there. Like, I think Tom Brady's probably the best example, right? He's the greatest at his profession, which over there, golf is the biggest sport that you can play over there in Japan. That's why he's that sort of national hero. I have a feeling that he tries to kind of calm everyone down, kind of tries to pump the brakes on the hype train there a little bit, just to manage expectations, because golf's a volatile sport. These professionals, more than anybody, know how random that it can be, right? So I think it might be part of that, playing that sort of PR game to try and kind of take the hype down a little bit. I'm still playing him, right? Last year, he gave us that same sort of spiel, went out there, won the golf tournament. And he's done the same thing over the last few months at this point, right? He's kind of given us this little dance around with the injury, withdrawn from Pro-Am. Sometimes he withdraws, sometimes he doesn't from the actual event. I'm done trying to guess, right? He's over there in Japan. He's going to play if he can walk tomorrow, if he's, not bedridden from whatever ailment that he's worrying about right now, he's going to play. It's his Japanese home field event. a place that he's the returning champion at. It's not an event that he's just going to be like, oh, you know what? The neck doesn't feel perfect today. I'm not going to play. That's not going to happen. I can just tell you, it's a big deal for Hideki to be playing over here in Japan. Still love Colin Morikawa. He's 17.7% owned. So getting attention now. I thought he might be a little bit lower owned, but don't be surprised if he comes in closer to like 13, 14%. People are just so enthralled with getting to a Sungjae Im, a Hideki Matsuyama, and a Xander Schauffele that I don't think they're considering guys like a Colin Morikawa nearly as much as they should. So I would just say that, right? So if these guys come in a little bit higher owned than we're projecting, and maybe Colin Morikawa comes in a little bit lower owned, I think that would probably be the reason why. Next up, we've got Sungjae Im, who's a fade, and he's a great example of like a whole class of players that I'm fading this week. And the idea here is that first off, Sungjae's playing a lot of golf. Played every slate at the President's Cup, right? Went out there, has played like, I think at least 4 of the last 5 weeks at this point. So he's a busy guy. He gets on a plane there Sunday night out of Las Vegas. Doesn't get until Japan. You have to think this, right? Because he's also like going back in time. So, you know, by the time he lands, not only has a lot of time passed in the air, he's also going ahead in time zone, right? So he's got a huge time difference. He doesn't land until Tuesday. I don't think people realize that about these guys that were playing over there at the Shriners. Is like they got there on Tuesday at the very least. Then they woke up, you're jet lagged, you don't really want to go out there and practice very much. And then you have one day of like full practice right there on a Wednesday. Now, Sungjae Im's played here before, right? A few of the other guys that were there at the Shriners have been here before. They're probably okay. But Tom Kim, Sungjae Im, I'm worried about them not being, first off, being fatigued. Second off, even having all of their wits about them. It's just, like, even for me as a content creator over here in America, it's been really fast. You know, from Monday until lock, right? Getting all my content done was a lot more of a squeeze this week. It's the same thing for these players, except that they're dealing with the physical part too. They still have to work out. They still have to go to their nutritionist, all that sort of fun stuff. Maybe not Tom Kim. He looks like he enjoys a good old Big Mac like I do from time to time. He looks like he's not really working with a nutritionist, which is all right, Tom Kim. You're a stud anyways. World loves you regardless. But you get the point here. I feel like people are underselling the guys that had to play last week, that effect that they're having on them. So there's a whole class of players that if they're chalk based on how they played at the Shriners, it's like a laughable fade to me because first off, they're dealing with the fatigue. And then second off, it's just like a one event sample size. Like people are going to like think that Matthew Neesmith's a killer now. Like, is he, do we think he's that guy? Is he him as all the hit people would say these days? Probably not. Right, probably not worth being twice as owned as a Lucas Herbert. Same thing with Sepp Straka, right? You could argue that same sort of thing. That's Mito Pereira, another player that I'm fading with that same sort of narrative. Tom Hoagie, like almost all of the guys I have down as a fade, except for guys like a Cameron Young, who we'll talk about, are down as fades because of that. Like it could have legitimate effect. And now it's a 4-round event. They're going to catch up eventually, right? So like by Friday and Saturday, they're probably feeling 100%, not worrying all that much about like fatigue at that point. But you got to win the GPP, right? You hopefully have 4 ceiling rounds from your players. And when they're like the chalk, when he's 28% owned, you have, let's see, Tom Hoagie's 15.2%. Mito's 22%. Straka's 13. And, 13% doesn't seem like all that much ownership. But that's 2-3 times as much as the guys around him. Now, you can see Grillo, right, that same sort of ownership level. He's just a much better player than Sepp Straka and Matthew Neesmith. Like, and that's just a fact, by the way. That's not an opinion. Me saying that Grillo's a better player than those two, he's like twice the player as them in terms of resume. I mean, whether you're looking at wins, whether you're looking at shots, gain metric, anything, money per season, all of those sort of metrics, he's like literally twice the player as those other two guys. So let's not forget, right, who some of these players are, right? Like Matthew Neesmith isn't him. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Anyways, talked about some of those fades. Let's catch up on chat. Don't want to get too behind on the questions and all that sort of fun stuff. Randy says, Luke List, does he have a chance? If Hideki won here and if Tiger Woods in his geriatric state where he can't putt anymore was able to win, yes, he can win, because I don't want to say that Luke List is essentially what Tiger Woods is at this point, but that's essentially the case, right? Except that Tiger Woods is the greatest pressure putter of all time. From tee to green, like Tiger Woods is like the best at almost all 3 shots gained categories. I mean, the off the tee is going to have to come around, right? The distance is going to lag at this point. But he's capable, kind of like a Luke List, of just murdering the field in all 3 of those categories. Yeah, Randy, he does. He could win this golf tournament. I actually have bet him outright. So yeah, that gives you an idea. Yeah, I do think he has a chance. Andy says Hovland versus Cam Young, first round head to head. Who do you think shoots higher? Well, I think that Hovland has a better score, so he would have a lower score there. I think that Cam Young isn't the greatest course fit. So we'll talk about it here in a second. Antonio says, what's up? Do you know why this is starting on a Wednesday and the event is 4 days? It's over there in Japan, man. So they're ahead 13 hours. So it's just the time zone difference. Regular 4-day event, Thursday through Sunday over there in Japan. Steven says, hasn't CT Pan always played this course well? He has, and he also played the Olympics in the other course in Japan, the Kasa Mugaseki golf course well. He's from Thailand, so obviously he goes over there, visits family all the time, that sort of thing. So he has to be used to the travel a little bit more than other players. So yeah, I like him there. As it said, when's Tiger's next PGA Tour tournament? No idea, bro. Hopefully soon. I don't know if he's ever going to play a regular tour event, though, unfortunately. He's kind of alluded to the fact that he wants to keep it to majors. Maybe he plays the Players some year, which would kind of be my only dream of getting to see him at a regular PGA Tour event. So we'll see. Maybe he'll play one of those big-time events like the Genesis over there. He's obviously a part of that golf tournament, so he'd have a little bit of incentive to play that kind of event. But I don't think it's anytime soon, unfortunately, Wilson. Mark says, can Tom Kim go back-to-back? I'd usually say no, but you never know with that kid. Yeah, that's the argument for him, right? Is that maybe he's a generational sort of talent. I would venture to say that it's more likely not to happen, but it's possible. I don't want to say it's not possible because he looks like one of those generational sort of talents. Those sort of players don't usually go back-to-back, right? They're capable of it. But yeah, I wouldn't say that he can't, right? I would not feel comfortable telling you, no, he's not going back to back. No chance I would say that. It's just, that would be foolishness. Blitz says, Tom Kim is a Bond rat waiting to happen. Probably already got his Lambo. Not sure what you mean by that. Antonio says, who you got winning this thing? I got Hovland. We'll talk about it. And Bo Hostler, he's all right, but he's getting a little bit more ownership than I'd like. So I'm not the biggest fan. Let's talk through this 9K range. We'll get to Bo Hostler later. He's actually somebody we're going to talk about a little extensively. Talked about the 10K options. Tom Kim, he's also coming over from the Shriners off the win. So if you're worried about fatigue, maybe you're off of him. Maybe you're not. You think he's going to go back to back. I don't want to talk you in either direction, to be honest, because he's probably the most contentious player in the entire field, right? If you're playing him, you're probably playing him in at least 60% of your lineups. If you're not, you're probably playing 0%. So if you want to see where I'm at, go to the Patreon page. I already told you, by the way, if you were listening closely, what I'm doing with Tom Kim, but I'm not going to repeat myself. Victor Hovland at $9,500. If you ask me who I think is going to win this week, I think it's Victor Hovland. I just have this weird feeling that, and again, it's a feeling, it's a gut wrench, right? We're all degenerates out here making bets, right? Sometimes you got to go with your gut, because if you don't, and then it ends up happening, you feel like an absolute fucking idiot, right? And that's my MO there, right? If I have something that I'm running with, I'm going to run with it. I think Victor Hovland wins this week. I thought Tom Kim was going to win last week. It worked out for me. I played him in almost half of my lineups. By the way, guys, I did my lineup review, started this series this week. So if you want to see all of the results from last week, I look at the actual ownership, projected points versus actual scored points for the entire slate. I break down what went well for me, what didn't go so well. I was all over Tom Kim last week, played him. It was, I believe, my highest leveraged player to the field. Might have been, yeah, he was my highest leveraged player to the field, was Tom Kim last week. That's Victor Hovland for me this week. He's 16.8% owned. Might come in a little bit higher owned because I have seen a few other people kind of touting him this week, giving him the credit that he actually deserves. And there was a poll I saw put out. It was actually Andy Lack, who I have a lot of respect for, said, who's better for their career, right? This isn't talking just in talent level, okay? Victor Hovland versus Tom Kim. And 60% of people voted for Tom Kim. I hate to say it, but that's such a moron take to take Tom Kim, say that he's had the better career to this point. He has 2 career wins versus Victor Hovland's 6 or 7 international wins, and then let alone his resume from a more consistent standpoint, right? It's laughable to think that Tom Kim's already the better player. Like, I think he's got a lot more upside, maybe. Like, I mean, just his charisma, his moxie is special, right? Victor Hovland doesn't have that same sort of moxie or that same sort of mental attitude. But to say that he's already a better player than Victor is like laughable. So if that tells me that, Tom Kim's going to be way higher owned than Victor Hovland, right? If we have all these people on golf Twitter that are supposed to know what they're talking about, right? You think that, if you're on golf Twitter, you're probably pretty plugged in, know what you're talking about with golf. If 60% of those people think that Tom Kim's better, what do the slapdicks think that have no idea what the hell they're talking about? And that makes up a good amount of these DraftKings fields. You guys got to remember that, right? Not everybody's out there researching like we are right now, right before lock. I don't know. I'm excited to play Victor Hovland. He's you can't tell me that Tom Kim's like twice the player Victor Hovland. You're full of it at that point. And if you want to do a head-on-head bet, like just a one-on-one, I'll probably give you even money on it. And I guarantee Tom Kim's probably the favorite over Victor Hovland. I would literally take even money on it. It's just, it's laughable. It's laughable. And truly, like if you were taking the odds of the field to be like 2-1, right? I get 2-1 for taking Victor Hovland. That's why I'm playing him in DFS. Like when you put it in that sort of format, it's ridiculous. You see how foolish it would be to take Tom Kim over, at least in my opinion. Again, you know what I'm doing with Tom Kim now, if you can't tell. And that was after hitting him last week on an outright and playing him in like half my lineups. So as you can tell, somebody goes out there, misses the cut, I don't give a shit. I play him, right? Emiliano Grillo going right back to the well. Somebody wins me a golf tournament, yeah, act like I have loyalty now to that player. You're kidding me. That's not my style. I'm very cutthroat out here. I'm not going to blindly give allegiances to players just because they won me a little bit of money one week, right? Hey, win me a milli maker, maybe I'll show you some loyalty at that point, right? When we're talking about a couple $100 wins, you're not getting any loyalty with me. We'll just say that. Tony says, who had the better career so far, Tom Kim or Hovland? If you answer Tom Kim to that question, I hate to say it, but I'm going to be completely blamed to you. You're a fucking moron. That's all I got. Let's move on with the player pool here. Anyways, so I like Victor Hovland there. Cameron Young at $9,300. He's 20% owned, which I honestly thought he was going to be low owned. I was like, okay, Cam Young hasn't been playing that flashy style of golf for quite some time. He's had a few, uninspiring performances. I don't want to call him dog shit, right? Because he's still like making cuts, putting up respectable scores. But he's had a few uninspiring performances, right? Not quite what we're used to seeing from him, particularly at the Open Championship, for example. The issue I have here is his driving accuracy. The man, when he's dialed in, is going to hit fairways. He's going to gain you 6 to 7 strokes to the field off the tee. When he's just having an average day, he's going to hit you 6 or 7 fairways out of 14, and those 6 or 7 misses around Narashino are going to be extremely worrisome. You have the tree-lined fairways out there. The rough, as Xander Schauffele has already alluded to, is going to be gnarly. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't seem like a good course fit for him. So the fact that he's chalk now 20% at this sort of course fit is why I'm fading him. Clearly high potential player. We know that he's one of the best players, period, in this field. He's a better player than Sungjae. I think he's probably a better player than Morikawa. So you could argue that he should potentially be the third most expensive player in this field. I think there's an argument to be had for that. But at this sort of course fit, I don't love it. So I'm off of it. I'm not going to be there on Cam Young. By the way, he's probably the fade that I'm most worried about. I'm completely okay fading Sungjae. Tom Kim, I don't have an issue with. A lot of these other players, I don't, they could win, right? But at the same time, I'm not like kind of losing sleep over it. It's a good thing we don't have to sleep tonight, right? We got lock here in about an hour and 15 minutes, by the way, for anybody still making lineups. I'm scared about the Cam Young fade. I have to say that he's the one guy who makes you shake a little bit when you go out there and fade him, because he could boat race the field. Like if he just finds a way to hit all those fairways, he wins this by like 5-6 strokes, like Hideki did last year. It's just that's not going to happen very often. Like it might happen once or twice in his career where he gets that dialed in with his driver. It's just I hate that that's even within his range of outcomes. It's an unfortunate thing. But let's move on. I move on to this 8K range. I love Tommy Fleetwood. So he's half as owned as Cameron Young. So I kind of wanted to point this out here. He's not half as likely to succeed. Tommy Fleetwood has been excellent over the last month, whether it was on the PGA Tour to end the year. He had a lot of solid performances, or notably on the European Tour, also posted quite a few top finishes. So he's getting more consistent. He's gaining across the board across all 4 shots gained categories. And just to give you the exact numbers here, let's see, it's really impressive stuff. Gaining a third of a stroke in all of the categories from fairway in, and then a slight gainer off the tee, right? So he's never the best off the tee player in the world, but he's far from inadequate. He's a little bit better than tour average when it comes to that category, and doing all the right things for us. So I like him. I don't think he should be half as owned as somebody like a Cameron Young. So as a pivot that I'm making, Terrell Hatton I could see getting to. I don't want to say all that much about him, but I do like him. I think he makes some sense. Corey Connors still a core pick, only 11% owned. You got to love that. I kind of figured because of his form that he might be low owned, and that's the case. So still firing up Corey Connors. Talked about Keegan Bradley. Nick asked about him. I love Keegan Bradley here. Siwoo Kim makes a lot of sense too. He's coming in with form. The putter change has seemingly helped here. Excuse me, guys. He went to the Adam Scott putter when, if you haven't seen it, Siwoo Kim's using the broomstick at this point, and it's really helped his game. It helped Aaron Wise. Aaron Wise made that same sort of change about 4 to 5 months ago and saw an uptick in his putting, and now Siwoo Kim did the same thing. And Aaron Wise kind of came back down to earth, so I do want to mention that that's within the range of outcomes here, but he sustained that putter for a few months before that happened. So I wouldn't be surprised if Siwoo were to come back down to earth, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he continued it for maybe another 4 or 5 starts and then ended up tailing off. So I don't know, it's hard to tell, but he definitely brings quite a bit of upside to the table. Sahith Theegala, I promised Nick we'd talk about him too. 7.6% owned. Like, what is this? Why do people just not want to play him all of a sudden? Like, he's a stud player. He's way too cheap at $8,700. He's not gaining on bent grass. It certainly has the issues with the flat stick, at least, it is small sample size on the bent grass surface. I'm willing to take a shot on him. You kidding me? Like, he's played well at other ball striking golf courses, like what we have for the Waste Management, right? Finished in second. The Sanderson Farms, it's a birdie fest as opposed to what I think is going to be a difficult golf course here. But he shouldn't be half as owned as a Tom Hoge. Tom Hoge was like a $6,000 golfer a month ago. Before the 3M Open, he had missed like 8 straight missed cuts. And I shit you not, guys, he was like $6,700. He was way down there on the pricing board. He was like 1% owned. And people called me crazy for touting him that week. And he finished in like second place, right? Almost ended up winning that golf tournament. Now people want to play him at 15% of lineups, which is chalk for this range. $8,600. It's like people are so short-sighted. Like I understand recent form is a thing. Like this is like just a whole spiel we could have for hours and hours here about people's just their psychology is so fucking backwards when it comes to playing DFS. But I think that like Tom Hoge's just a better player now. Like he's in a good stretch of form, but let's not forget who Tom Hoge is, right? I'm Tom Hoge stan. I play him a lot more than other people out there, but you got to be kidding me. Twice as highly owned as Sahith Theegala. Like what is that? Like, that makes no sense to me. Like, it's borderline moronic to me that would be the ownership. And sure, Tom Hoge could beat Sahith Theegala this week, but he's not twice as likely to succeed, right? And we're not going to hinge on one outcome, right? We play DFS for a season, right? Like, I'm not living and dying by my results every single week, right? That's what that whole result section's for, right? I'm going to show you some of the swings where we have good weeks. We have weeks that go a little bit poorly. In the long-term perspective, you have to go to Sahith there. Like, it's just a very clear pivot to make, right? So it's just, if you're a huge Tom Hoge believer and you really think that he's twice the player of Sahith Theegala, then go ahead and play him, right? By all means, right? You make your own lineups, but I also think you're a moron if that's what you think. I honestly think that you probably shouldn't even be playing DFS if that's something you legitimately believe. I'm not trying to be a dick, but I'm trying to give you legit advice. Like that's I don't know. You're probably not making very much money in DFS if that's what you think. Cameron Davis at $8,500. I love it. I think he's going way under owned, so I don't want to talk about him too much. Mito Pereira, though, 22% owned, right? So he's over 3 times owned as somebody like a Scott Stallings, nearly 4 times as owned. And it's all because of his performance last week, right? You see Mito getting on a little stretch of golf, and you go, ooh, Mito Pereira, right? He finished in second at the PGA Championship. Ooh, Mito Pereira, like, he's been decent in the past from time to time. Must we forget the type of form that Mito Pereira is in? which people just love to forget about. So 4th place, cool. That was nice, right? At the President's Cup, he was dog shit. Was utter dog shit at the President's Cup. Was not doing anything for his team out there. 42nd place, the last time he played at the FedEx St. Jude. Hardly made the cut there. And before that, it was just like missed cut after missed cut after missed cut. And if you look at the shots gained metrics, they're not horrible for Mito Pereira, right? But he's not like some world killer. He's losing in 3 out of the 4 shots gained categories, right? And now he's going to be 22% owned. Like, I understand. When Mito first came on the tour, guys, like, I was like one of the biggest Mito cheerleaders. Like, he was like my guy. Like, he was self-proclaimed like I was a Mito dude, right? But it feels like those sort of players always end up getting too liked at a certain point. Like, they just get steamed to the moon, as some people would say. That's what's happened here. Now, 22% owned Mito is by far the highest owned player here in the 8K range. And if you compare him to some of these 9 and 10K options, he's approaching their ownership levels, which is it's ridiculous for one of these 8K golfers. So I'm fading him. I love Mito. If you're out there watching this, Mito or Mito's family, still love you to death. But hey, we're playing DFS, right? We're playing large field GPPs against 23,000 other people. We have to play it smart. And playing a 22% owned Mito Pereira is the antithesis of making a smart play. Scott Stallings, on the other hand, is coming in with form. He had the one bad performance at the Tour Championship, which scared me off of playing him at the Fortinet, or was it the Sanderson Farms? Which, let's see. I know it was one of those 2 events. Yeah, it was the Sanderson Farms where he finished in 13th place. He didn't kill me that week, right? 13th wasn't like you needed him in the optimal lineup, but he proved me wrong. He got the irons back, right? So maybe it was just a 1 event sample size. So I'm willing to kind of look past it now. And if you look at the shots gained metrics, right, it doesn't look like he's playing all that well on approach, right? He's only gaining, I put only in quotes here, 0.8 shots per round. If you remove the minus 12 shots gained on approach at the Tour Championship, Scott Stallings is gaining close to 2 strokes around on approach. Legitimately, he's like just hitting the ball better than everybody else in the field, and it's not even close. So when I did that, and by the way, a lot of times I do that, I take outliers out of my shots gained metrics just to see where a player's true baseline is. Scott Stallings is hitting the ball on approach better than like I've ever seen someone hit it. Like for the last 24 rounds. I can't remember a time where it wasn't like a 2 or a 4 round sample size where somebody was gaining more strokes on approach. So, hey, if you're a big approach guy like I am this week, like Hideki winning, Tiger Woods winning at this event, all that sort of fun stuff, then why wouldn't you play Scott Stallings? He's coming in with the best form you could possibly think in terms of your approach play. Let's go on, move down into the 7K range. We talked about Mito Pereira just being inexplicably 22% owned. It's just ridiculous to me. Sebastian Munoz at $8,100. So he's getting steamed by a lot of players. It feels like a lot of people have bet him outright this week. So it makes me feel like the ownership's going to come in higher than where I have it projected as of right now. Oh, what the heck was that? Not sure what's going on with my spreadsheets there. Either way, I think that he's a good play. He's got the course history that we're looking for. The irons have been okay of late. So we take a look at the recent form metrics. You can see he's gaining in every category but around the green, which has kind of been his MO for the last year. He figured it out. Like, he's become a much more complete player. He used to just be an irons and a putting specialist who off the tee would pop from time to time. And around the green, he was always pretty dog shit. Now that's not the case. He's a well-rounded player, which has served him well. He's started to accumulate a lot more FedEx Cup points as a result. So I like him. I think he makes sense. Still like Davis Riley, 9.2% owned. He withdrew last week from the Shriners and did not cite an injury, by the way. I don't know if anybody noticed that. They didn't add an injury tag to him when he withdrew. There's a legitimate chance he just didn't feel like playing. And he was like, you know what? I'm just going to give my spot up to somebody else that wants to play this week. I don't know. I'm not that worried about it. We haven't heard anything about a legitimate injury that we need to worry about. And until we do, I'm going to assume like he's not injured at all. So $8,000, 9.2% owned, definitely getting there. Sepp Straka, $7,900. Reason why I want to put him and Neesmith out, right? It's the same argument here. Lucas Herbert is not half the player of a Sepp Straka and a Matthew Neesmith. And in fact, when you take a look at their form, right, look at who's the best player. Number 28 model ranking on a Lucas Herbert. Even if you look at recent form, right, Herbert's outperforming Sepp Straka, and he's only 2 spots lower than Matthew Neesmith, who's coming in with all the form in the world, as all the touts out there are saying this week. Yet he's hardly better than Lucas Herbert. And from the long-term perspective, Herbert wipes them out of the water when it comes to their projection, yet is half his own. That's the definition of a pivot, right? And then you have someone down here like Chalk and Grillo, right, who's 12%, who's in that same level, right? So it's not like he's lower owned, but look, he's number 9 in total mono ranking. He's a great play this week. I talked him up in my value picks video about a couple hours ago because I love the play here. That's somebody I'm willing to take at 12%. Not Sepp Straka and Matthew Neesmith, who are being overrated because of a few recent performances. Again, I'll remind you, it's golf. Shit happens in golf, right? Even when we have the best plays in human history that have all the form, all the course history that we're looking for, it's kind of surprising when it hits. Like Patrick Cantlay last week, like everyone was really happy that faded him when he came in like 44% out. Like anyone that faded him, that was music to their ears, right? Because you're like, it's golf. It's volatile. He's probably not going to finish in the top 5. Now, he nearly won last week, right? So Patrick Cantlay kind of, slapped all those people in the face that ended up fading him, including myself. But it was almost surprising that he went out there and succeeded because we're just so used to seeing those guys flame out. Like it happens way, way more often than not. Now, it happened with Max Homa. He had a lot of success at the Fortinet. You also last week, had the Chalk Palm and Patrick Cantlay go out there and have a ton of success. But it's something that, it's happened a few times of late. Don't count on it happening all year. If you're new to PGA DFS, don't let that be your worldview now, right? You think that chalk is just going to hit every single time, that sort of thing, because you'll get taught a lesson sooner rather than later. That's all I'll say there. So if you're new to DFS, you probably want to avoid that sort of thinking. Let's move on to the chat, see what's going on, see if there's any questions. So he just says the group mind dumb AF. I would say the group think is dumb AF. If you're talking about that with Mito Pereira, I think that's when you put that message down there. People group think, right? So there's a narrative out there with DFS, right? Like the whole idea that you want to fade chalk is not unique. Pretty much everybody thinks that way, right? So when you have pieces of chalk, a lot of people make the same sort of pivots, right? And for whatever reason, people look at Mito as that like piece of chalk they have to eat this week. And the group think is really crazy out there. Antonio says, is driving distance the biggest feature that I'm looking at this week, or does putting matter a lot? To be honest, those are two of the things that I'm de-emphasizing the most. So putting, first off, Tiger Woods, and then, Hideki last year, not the best putters. So we have two examples of guys winning that aren't elite putters. And then with driving distance, I think because of how gnarly the rough is, also the fact that it's going to play so wet, it might be lift clean in place, which, by the way, if anybody out there is on the PGA Tour Twitter and they say it's going to be lift clean in place, please let me know. It's going to change my analysis a little bit. I'm a little bit more looking at accuracy than distance. So to answer your question, man, not really. Those two stats are kind of a little bit less important to me this week. But I don't know. It's always nice to have distance. It's always nice to be a good putter, right? So it's not like if you're a good putter or you're an elite distance guy, I'm going to hate you this week. That's definitely not the case. But it's not really what I'm honing in on, if that gives you an idea. And yeah, I figured you meant groupthink. It's crazy, man. It happens every single week. I mean, sometimes it works out, right? Homa got there. Cantlay got there, right? They're going to get paid off from time to time. There's a reason why they're chalk, right? They're good plays. They are more likely to succeed than everybody else, but not at the levels that they're being represented, right? So, yeah, I tend to think you agree with me there. It's it can be glaring from time to time. All right, so Mackenzie Hughes. It's another one of these guys that I group into this like Neesmith, Straka range. He's just not that good of a player. We've seen him pop from time to time. He's probably should have won before he did a few weeks ago there at the Sanderson Farms. Just anytime you look at him pop in the past, he like goes back to missing cuts right away. So if people are going to treat him now, 11% owned, like he's figured something out. Like I know the whole narrative now is like, oh, he's added distance. Every player on the tour the last 5 years has averaged adding 2 yards of distance per year. Everybody is working on distance 24/7 on the PGA Tour. So if your narrative for playing Mackenzie Hughes this week is like, oh, now he's a bomber, he's figured that out, you're going to fall flat on your face. You're probably going to look like a doofus. So definitely fading Mackenzie Hughes. That's not even a question, to be quite frank with you. I won't even think about it twice. Love Brendan still great off the tee. Played well here last time out, finished in 4th place. Gotta love that. Or actually, it might have been better. It might have been that tie for second. Either way, he played great last time. That was a top 5 finish. Kurt Kitayama is getting a lot of ownership too. And I don't think he's nearly as egregious as some of the other pieces of chalk here, but he shouldn't be 10% owned, which I believe is the last ownership that I had him at. So he's not my favorite play, to be frank with you. Luke List, I love. So he's a sleeper pick. I know somebody mentioned him before. He's got the Hideki feel to me, where Brendan Steele feel. Brendan Steele, right? He finished up there in the top 5 last year. Luke List is literally a carbon copy of him. And I kind of mentioned, by the way, guys, I'm not trying to say that Luke List is Tiger Woods, but from tee to green, they pretty much are the same player. The putting is just a massive difference between the two players. But I don't know. I like what I'm seeing with Luke List. I think he's a way underrated. He's got to hit fairways. That's the thing that Luke List is going to have to do this week. If he can find a way to hit that driver 350 yards like he does and get it in the short grass, he's going to be tough to beat. He's that sort of guy. He has that kind of upside. You've seen him win before there at the Farmers, which, by the way, based on how the rough is going to play this year, from what we've heard from Xander, also the wet conditions, the Farmers might not be the worst comp at least from the ball striking perspective. Like Martin Laird, another accurate driver, kind of like a Brendan Steele. Russell Knox, I like as well. So 4.5% owned. Another iron specialist that's a little bit more precise off the tee. So that's the idea there. Also, a guy that tends to struggle with the putter, which is, kind of a trend that we're going on there. Hayden Buckley is ridiculous chalk. Now, 12% owned at Hayden Buckley. I understand the approach numbers are great. And people just get a hard on anytime they see somebody with really good approach numbers. And you can see it's kind of been spiked, right? So he's right around a neutral. You take a look at the last 24 rounds, gaining off the tee, but he's had a few tournaments, especially of late, where he's been a huge gainer on approach. And that's what people are hunkering down on. He's an inconsistent 6K option, right? He should never be 12 to 15% owned. If he was 6 or 7%, maybe you play him in 15% and you feel a little bit uncomfortable about it, because that's well above his actual percentage chance of succeeding, but he's worth the upside, right? When he's 12% owned, you got to play him in a quarter of your lineups to get leverage. It becomes a completely different story. So, yeah, it's an easy fade for me. Half is owned, Lee Hodges, hitting the ball better. Let's look at the shots gained metrics. Oh, Lee Hodges actually gaining on approach, still gaining off the tee, and a pretty decent putter too. Oh, and what's even better, on the bent grass surface compared to other surfaces, he's a plus. He's a plus in terms of his baseline. So, number 18 in terms of total mono ranking, half is owned, right? So that was the idea with the live stream, right? The format here is I wanted to choose the people that were just being drastically over-owned and show you guys right around them that were just half is owned, maybe sometimes even less in a few circumstances that we've gone through. And Lee Hodges, based on every metric that I'm looking at this week, is a better play than Hayden Buckley, and he's half his own. So those are the sort of pivots that I'm getting to. Love Ches Reavie, talked him up in the value plays video. Another accurate guy off the tee that's solid with his irons, that struggles with the putter. Oh, what a surprise, right? To see him there in the player pool too. Hiroshi Iwata, I promised we'd get to him. And we're going to talk about a few of these Japan Tour guys too. He's played well on the PGA Tour before. He's shown up in some of the large field events. He finished in 18th place last year at the ZOZO, if memory serves me correctly. And he's $6,100. He's worth a few shots on. He's playing well over there on the Japanese tour. I like Yuto Katsuragawa. He's played really well on the Japan tour. Also, for one of the larger events they have on the entire season, he ended up finishing in the top 10. I like, let's see, where are you at? Takumi Kanaya. He finished in 7th place last year. Or was it? I just got to check. I think it might have been 5th. Either way, he had an excellent finish last year. He finished in 7th last year. Wada finished in 18th, like I expected him to. Let's go through a few of the others. There's a few other ones like Kazuki Higa. He actually won in his last start, and that was at a that really large Asian Tour event. He ended up winning that. So he's $6,600 coming in off a win. There's a few others. Let me see. Rikuya Hoshino is another one. Rikuya Hoshino has played in multiple U.S. Opens and Open Championships. Played well here last year too. So just a lot of those Japanese tour guys, no one's going to play them. They're actually really good. Kita Nakajima, another one, $6,100. Former #1 amateur in the world. All of these guys are worth shots on because they're super cheap. They're going to be 0.1% owned, and you play them in 3 or 4 lineups, even if you're playing 150. And I'm not kidding. I have a Wada in 7 of my 150 lineups. That's going to be more than enough to get leverage to him, right? If he goes off, one of those 7 lineups is going to get a lot of It's going to have a chance at least, right? If you have 7 combinations, you might not get all the guys that you need up top, but you're at least going to have a shot to get a good lineup. So I do like some of those Japanese tour players, but Awada's probably my favorite, particularly because he's 1.1% owned. And he's done it on the PGA Tour before. He's made cuts. He's gone out there, finished in the top 25 before. And at a no-cut event, right, you get him for all 4 rounds. He brings even more upside to the table. So let's catch up on chat, see what's going on. Let's see. CJ says, any Japanese players catching your eye? So yeah, I just went through a couple. I like Awada a whole lot. Takumi Kanaya, Rikuya Hoshino. Yeah, that Katsugawa guy. Shit, I can't even say his name, but I'm going to play him anyways. That's all right. All those sort of guys I'm definitely going to play. And Tom says he's getting way too much steal. I probably am too. I'm a glutton for punishment, right? He's got the course history. He fits my narrative just all too well this week. I feel you there, Tom. I'm pretty heavy on him too. Let's go over there to prize picks now. We're actually going to talk through a couple prize picks props that I like. And then at the end, we're going to make a few DraftKings lineups. So we're going to do this in a little bit of a different format. Just because I know a couple of you out there are waiting for the prize picks props, and I want to make sure we touch on them before lock here. So in terms of prize picks, they have this priced incorrectly. Last year it played over par, so it played to a 70.5 average. And then we have these like typhoon-like conditions, right? Where it's going to be like 16 to 25 miles an hour of winds in rain. These guys for strokes are like all going to go over. Now, I took an under on Hovland earlier. I also took an under on Miliano Grillo at the beginning of the week, which I don't feel very good about at this point. Like I've made that very clear to the people on my Patreon that there's like a reason why everyone on here got bumped up. So I'd be taking the over on pretty much anybody. Now, I'm not going to take the over on Hovland or Grillo. I'm still going to hope they go under, obviously. But a lot of other guys like a Christian Bezainhout, I talked him up on my YouTube channel. I'd be taking the over there. Sepp Straka, just honestly, like anyone on the board, I'd take the over because the scoring average is going to be like a 71.5, 72. It's legitimately going to be well over par. I mean, we're going to project players to shoot 2 under. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's a ceiling performance, right? And the ceiling performance happens like 15 to 20% of the time. Yeah, if you're playing strokes, honestly, you could pretty much pick anybody at random and take an over. But, the players that you aren't sold on this week, just take overs on them. It's you're going to be plus EV in pretty much no matter what you take. For birdies, I'd take the unders too. Now, I'm not as stoked on the unders for birdies as I am the overs for strokes, just because with that wet rough, all the tree-lined fairways with that wind, you could really get, a couple double, triple bogeys on the card, which could really set you aside in terms of your strokes. But you can still luck sack your way into a few putts made, right? Like a 30, 40 footer. You still have 3 par 5s out there. So I'm not as bullish on the fades for the birdie or better board. Yeah, so I'll just say that. Strokes is really where you want to live. You just want to fade like pretty much anybody here and print money. I don't want to say like print money, but like I would imagine if you just took every strokes prop and took the over on it, you'd hit it like a 90% rate. Like legitimately, I think a 90% rate, you're going to hit the over on here. Even for these studs, like sure, they only have to shoot 2 under par. Just wait. Like your first round leader might be 3 or 4 under today. Like I think that's probably where your first round leader is going to end up. And what that means, that like 5 people are probably going to shoot like -3 or better. Maybe like 10 to 15 at best are going to shoot -2 or better. Out of the 75, I mean, you're looking at just a majority of these guys, vast majority of them going over. Just want to make that as clear as humanly possible. The issue is here, right, is if you took the over on 2 of these, try to play a 2-man flex, 2-man power, so you can't do a 2-man flex. That'd be pretty cool. It would also be impossible. But you get paid 2.25x, which is like nothing, right? So obviously, if one of them was an under, it'd be 3x. So you get a negative impact there. A way to fix that, and just to give you an idea, we're going to take the over on Fowler because it's Ricky Fowler. Go over here to birdie or better matchup. I talked about this Corey Connors prop to start the week. You do that, it goes to 3x, right? So even though you have a fade and then 1 birdie or better matchup, this is probably where you want to live, because birdie or better matchups, sure, both players have to deal with the adverse conditions, but it's not like one guy's getting better conditions than the other. So it's still about who's going to have the higher birdie or better percentage. So when you have something like a Ramey versus Connors, where Connors is just clearly the better player, I'm going to get to him every single time. Now, there's a few other ones on the board that I like, much like all the projections for DFS. If you're looking for all of the props I'm taking, they are on the Patreon page though. But in general, it's just like all overs for strokes. Especially for the props that I've added towards the end, and then a few birdie or better matchups that I'm using to wipe away multipliers. And I'm just going to choose a couple here at random, right? So if you went with this, you could still build cards this way, right? So if we added in another fade, I believe this works. Let's see. So it's slightly decreased payout. So if you took 2 fades and then 2 of these better matchups, let's see what 3 fades would be just for it. Is it still 9x? So no, it lowers. Okay, so you're gonna have to do a 2-on-2 if you're trying to do like a 4-leg power, that sort of thing. I would recommend building that way. I would not try to force in like an over for birdie or better, birdie or better. I think that you're more than likely not going to hit. And then even guys like the Hovland under 69 and the Rio under 69 and a half that I have, I probably wouldn't even enter those. Like I would just, I would advise against it. I would try to just take the fades and then find your favorite birdie or better matchup. I think that's the plus EV way to go about the prize picks board. That's my thoughts on that side. Let's go over to DraftKings now, talk through a few lineups. We'll catch up on chat before we do so, see if there's any prize picks questions. Anointed says, why did Malinati withdraw? I have no idea. So I don't have any information on that, Anointed. I would check out the PGA Tour Comms Twitter. They might have some information. Did Luke discuss Jaeger? I did not. He's a little bit chalky for my liking, and I'm not going to let you know exactly what I think, but if I was playing him, I wouldn't want to talk him up because he's already chalky. I don't want him to be more chalky. That's what I'd say there. And Blitz says, Awada shot a 63 at Whistling Straits. Geez, he could go low. I didn't know he did that at Whistling Straits. You know, I envision him to be the shorter hitter. I can't imagine that you shoot a 63 at Whistling Straits and you're short off the tee. So maybe I'm completely wrong there. Again, it's just like, I don't even, to be honest, I don't remember even watching Awada play, but you know, when you look at his track record, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. He was like, the leader after 2 rounds at the RSM Classic. Like you remember these things, but you don't remember what he looked like. So I imagine maybe he is a bomber. I have no idea. You probably know a little bit more than me there. So let's catch up on this though. Go through a few lineups together. All right. So we have 50 minutes to lock, by the way. So get your lineups in. What we're going to do here is talk through a GBP lineup. So we're going to go through the 5 spots. You know, the last spot I had to leave up to your imagination because of the DraftKings overlords out there. We're going to go through a hand build for a large field GBP. So we're assuming this is for maybe a 23,000 entry contest, like what we have for the $5 this week, which is the contest that I'm entering. I have that, and then a few single entries that I'm going with for this week. And we'll talk about on the next week's review when we go through all my lineups, all my exposure and all that. But this is hand building for that large field GBP, right? So like the 150 max, not my single entry. So we're going to think a little bit differently here. Rather than worrying about median, worrying about, you know, trying to min cash with our single entry, we're going to be a little bit more daring here, right? Trying to build for more of a outlier outcome. And, you know, the best way to do so, right, is I love Morikawa for GBPs. You know, I love Victor Hovland, right? He's my pick to win. So it's not a surprise that he's going to be a core pick for me. And a lot of the lineups that I'm getting to, but by taking a Morikawa up top, rather than let's say like a Hideki or a Xander Schauffele, you know, that's going to give us a lot of leverage up top. And if we just take 1, maybe 2 low-owned players with the last 4 spots, I'm going to feel really good about our leverage, at least ownership-wise to the field. So to give you an idea of how I'd round this out, let's go to put Scott Stallings in there, another low-owned GPP player that I absolutely love this week. Lucas Herbert, right? Another sleeper pick that I think is just being vastly overlooked. And let's put a Awada in there because I just want to show you the type of flexibility that taking a $6,100 golfer gives you. You know, we can essentially live in the high part of the 7K range and then the 8 and 9K range, right? We're feeling really solid about at least 5 of our players in our lineup. And you can see there's 2 names that I would definitely take in this sort of lineup right there around our max salary left. And you could feel really comfortable about that sort of lineup. So there's going to be people that avoid this bottom of the 6K range because they're scared to play these Japanese tour players, not realizing the kind of utility that they bring to the table. I mean, even if we wanted to play Ches Reavie, you know, a value pick that we talked about going into the week, well, we have $7,800 remaining, right? There's, again, one major name that we talked about in our value picks video that makes perfect sense to round out that sort of lineup. So those are the type of builds that I'm personally going to be getting to in a large field GPP. I'm going to be taking a lot of shots down low. Like if you saw my player poll, some of the guys we talked about, there was quite a few guys down towards the bottom of the board that I'm playing and towards the middle, the top part of the 6K range, at least like 10 to 15 guys that I'm playing. So I'm taking shots down there. I don't think there's a massive difference in talent. from some of the guys here in the mid 6K range to even the top of the 7K range. Like I think this Neesmith has to be the best example, especially Straka. They're not dog shit, but they're not good. They're not like tour killers out there. Okay, I could just 100% tell you that they're not that much better than those 6K options. Like hardly better. They're just in form right now, right? I'm not going to buy those mid golfers when they're being priced like guys that actually have talent. It's not going to happen. I think it's a slap dick move if I've ever seen one before. So that's what I'm thinking for large field GPPs. If I'm playing in cash, so let's give you the cash build this week. It's probably taking Sanjay, Tom Kim. Let's see, how chalky can we make a lineup? Let's just like Mito Pereira has to be in your cash lineup. Like it's just going to be taking all these slapdicks that all the cash heroes think are actually good golfers, and they're not. So yeah, this would probably be like my core 4 for a cash lineup. These 4 players are all fades for me this week, and but in cash, I'd probably begin to them, right? That's what you want to do in cash. You want to eat all that chalk when possible. Take the guys that are coming in with form. Because if you're looking from a 50-50 standpoint, right, I was very clear about this, right? You know, a lot of times the chalk, they're going to outperform their peers from a 50-50 standpoint more often, right? But it's usually like a 55-45 split or like a 60-40 split. They shouldn't be twice as highly owned, right? They're not twice as good as the other player. That's the whole idea here, right? But when you're playing in cash, when you're just trying to finish in the top 50% to get your money back, you want to play those guys, right? Because they're the best plays, as you would put in quotes down there, right? So you don't want to overthink it. That's the idea with cash. I think a lot of people are kind of confused by that whole idea there, and that's the whole cash ideology. That's all I've got, boys, for this live stream. I got to get out of here and fine tune a few of those single entries. I'm going to see if there's a little bit of overlay with any of the single entries. I doubt there is. They're usually pretty good about sizing these contests. But if there are, maybe I'll fire a few more bullets for this week. But best of luck for you guys. We only have 45 minutes until lock now. So we'll have some golf to watch this evening, which will be awesome. And then tomorrow. So for showdown content, I'm going to be doing it in like the morning. So I'm going to figure out a time, probably like 10 a.m., not 9 a.m. I don't wake up early. I need my beauty sleep. I stay up late till like 3, 4 a.m. So I got to sleep till at least like 10 a.m. So I'll probably wake up at like 10, figure out what we're going to do from a showdown perspective, get projections up. We'll do a live stream at some point going over what to expect for round 2. And some prize pick stuff too. So we'll be covering all the tournament. I actually like that we're getting to watch the golf at night. I get to sleep on the slate a little bit and then tackle the next day's slate. So we're not going to get it very often, but we might as well take advantage of it. It's actually pretty good from the content creation side. But until then, guys, best of luck with all of your lineups, any outright bets that you go with. And let's make this week a profitable one, fellas.